We need to talk privately because I'm starting to realize that what's breaking me isn't distance, it's unspoken words. We need to talk privately. There are truths living in my chest that can't survive in silence any longer. We need to talk privately because if I say this out loud to anyone else, it'll lose its meaning. We need to talk privately. My heart's been whispering things to yours, and I think you've heard them in your dreams. We need to talk privately because even when I try to move on, your memory pulls me back like gravity. We need to talk privately. What I'm about to confess might ruin us, or it might save everything we still have left. We need to talk privately. I'm not sure if it's love or guilt that keeps me holding on, but I need you to know. We need to talk privately because pretending not to care has become more exhausting than loving you ever was. We need to talk privately. I've been carrying too much truth inside me, and it's starting to sound like your name. We need to talk privately. I've waited for the right moment, and I think that moment is now or never. We need to talk privately. There's a storm between us, and silence is no longer strong enough to calm it. We need to talk privately because no one else would understand the ache of loving someone who feels like home. We need to talk privately. I've kept pieces of you in my heart for too long, and they're starting to cut me open. We need to talk privately. There are words I've buried under smiles, and they're clawing their way out tonight. We need to talk privately because the things I left unsaid are now louder than anything I ever told you. We need to talk privately. I can't decide if I want to heal or stay broken in the shape of your love. We need to talk privately because love doesn't end with silence. It ends when one heart gives up trying to be heard. We need to talk privately. I see the distance in your eyes, and it scares me more than your absence ever could. We need to talk privately because sometimes the hardest truth is admitting that we still care. We need to talk privately. If this touched your soul, don't scroll, like, comment your favorite quote, and subscribe for more. We need to talk privately because I can feel your presence in every room, even when you're miles away. We need to talk privately. The words I've been swallowing are starting to taste like regret. We need to talk privately because if I don't tell you now, the truth might never find its way out of me. We need to talk privately You have no idea how many times I almost told you everything. We need to talk privately because I'm tired of pretending that silence is peace when it's actually pain. We need to talk privately. There's a version of me that only exists when you're near, and I miss that version. We need to talk privately. I've learned that love doesn't die, it just changes the way it haunts us. We need to talk privately because there's a difference between moving on and pretending not to look back. We need to talk privately. I keep hearing your name in places where I shouldn't even be thinking of you. We need to talk privately because I still remember the way your silence felt, louder than any argument. We need to talk privately. I don't want to hurt you. I just want to stop hurting myself. We need to talk privately because I'm realizing that love without honesty is just slow heartbreak. We need to talk privately. My heart has been rehearsing this conversation for nights I couldn't sleep. We need to talk privately. I've written so many drafts of this truth, but only my eyes know how to say it right. We need to talk privately because I'm afraid the next time I see you, I might forget how to breathe. We need to talk privately. The things I want to say would sound too raw if anyone else overheard. We need to talk privately because part of me still believes there's something left to save. We need to talk privately. I've been hiding behind laughter, but inside, I'm still bleeding your name. We need to talk privately because every time I try to forget you, the universe reminds me why I can't. We need to talk privately. You might not recognize the person I've become since you stopped looking. We need to talk privately because if I don't speak now, my silence will say things I never meant. We need to talk privately. I want to show you the parts of me that broke the day you left. We need to talk privately because somewhere between us lies the truth we've both been running from. We need to talk privately. I need to know if your heart still whispers my name when you're alone. We need to talk privately because your absence taught me that missing someone can become a lifestyle. We need to talk privately. I can't promise forgiveness, but I can offer understanding. We need to talk privately because what I'm about to say will change everything between us forever. We need to talk privately, away from the noise, away from the eyes. There's truth waiting to be set free. We need to talk privately, Not because I'm angry, but because I can't keep pretending everything's fine anymore. We need to talk privately because what I feel for you can't be explained in front of anyone else. We need to talk privately because there are things I have hidden behind smiles that now ache to be spoken aloud. We need to talk privately. The truth isn't meant for everyone, only for the one who deserves to hear it. We need to talk privately. My voice trembles not from fear, but from the weight of what I must confess. We need to talk privately because what I've been pretending not to feel has grown too loud to silence anymore. We need to talk privately. You'll see in my eyes everything my words have been afraid to reveal. We need to talk privately before the world finds out what only your heart should know. We need to talk privately. My thoughts have turned into storms, and you're the calm I need to face them. We need to talk privately. I don't want my pain to become someone else's entertainment. We need to talk privately because between us lies something too fragile for the world to understand. We need to talk privately, not to argue, but to remember why our souls still reach for each other. We need to talk privately. The silence between us is starting to sound like a goodbye I never gave. We need to talk privately because my heart's been carrying something your heart deserves to know. We need to talk privately because what I'm feeling isn't safe in public words. We need to talk privately, not because I'm done, but because I'm breaking in ways you can't see. We need to talk privately. I've been reading the messages between your lines, and they're louder than your words. We need to talk privately before misunderstandings become permanent scars. We need to talk privately because I've realized some truths should only be whispered between two hearts. We need to talk privately where no one else can interrupt the ache in our voices. We need to talk privately. There's something sacred about confessions made in the quiet. We need to talk privately. I can't keep carrying both love and confusion in the same heart. We need to talk privately because the world doesn't need to witness how much I still care. We need to talk privately because my eyes will tell you things my mouth never could. We need to talk privately before my patience turns into silence and my silence turns into hesitance. We need to talk privately because what I feel has crossed the line between longing and madness. We need to talk privately because my dreams keep replaying a truth I'm too scared to admit. We need to talk privately. I don't want anyone else to hear the sound of me breaking. We need to talk privately. I've been pretending to be strong, but the truth is I'm tired of pretending. We need to talk privately. Because the person I am around others isn't the one I am with you. We need to talk privately. There's something burning in my chest that only you can put out. We need to talk privately because what I want to say isn't meant to be said through screens. We need to talk privately. I've been collecting moments I couldn't share until now. We need to talk privately because love isn't something that should be explained in front of witnesses. We need to talk privately before we lose the version of us that still wants to try. We need to talk privately, not to blame, but to understand what went wrong between love and silence. We need to talk privately because the truth has been knocking on my heart for too long. We need to talk privately. You deserve to hear everything I've been afraid to say. We need to talk privately because my thoughts are no longer secrets, they're screams waiting for your name. We need to talk privately. I owe you the honesty I once replaced with distance. We need to talk privately because even my shadow misses the warmth of your presence. We need to talk privately. I've reached the point where silence feels heavier than confession. We need to talk privately because this story between us deserves an ending only we can write. We need to talk privately. You'll understand once you see the truth in my trembling hands. We need to talk privately before the wrong words replace the right emotions. We need to talk privately because love, when unspoken, becomes poison to the soul. We need to talk privately. I can't breathe under the weight of everything left unsaid. We need to talk privately because every version of my truth still begins and ends with you. We need to talk privately because something inside me is screaming to be understood.